What's up, everybody? It's Kid Cuebas, your art appreciation, angsting, compassionate fellow human being. I'm back at you with another Monday mood. I hope that you are well out there in the ether. I hope that you're not a light sleeper like I am, because you can function. And I'm having trouble doing that. I think it's just stress that's been creeping in on me. I definitely feel like too many voices have been inside my head, like what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what the world should do, what the world shouldn't do, what's going on in our socio-political climate. All of those things definitely serve to have been driving me crazy, and I'm sure they're driving you crazy too. No stranger to it. To the nitty gritty, though, I will say that South Park episode was a nice reprieve, and a lot of the sentiment that I hear is like, OMG, I'm concerned for their well-being or their safety. Well, no counter-revolutionary has ever been safe. Love has never been a safe movement. It's been a risky and challenging movement. And wouldn't we rather say how we really feel than be stuck inside and stuck with how we feel on the inside? Because I tried to do that too for a long time, because the fascism plus like pressure for censorship from the PC community really created this cocktail of what do I even say, think, or feel, and how do I validate that in the public eye? However, I have to validate my beliefs myself and trust that I'm not intentionally causing harm to people, and you've got to trust you're not intentionally causing harm to people, and really just say what you have to say with your chest and with an open heart, and be teachable, be coachable, learn your lessons when you make mistakes. A really good example of that is Sierra. She got taken down for saying the C word, using a slur towards Asian people out of ignorance. It was pretty clear the context was ignorant and kind of stupid. And, that's no excuse for racism, but when somebody can hold themselves accountable for their actions like she has, then, after some time in the doghouse, she deserves to come out of that doghouse. It's like, we are in a time where there's a lot of accusations before there's real evidence to support someone being mean-spirited or evil-hearted. And really, it's just humans make mistakes, and they say really ugly things while they make those mistakes. And it's not like excusing behavior, but it is saying that if we don't offer people the redemption arc, and we're so convictive that we won't allow people to even, make mistakes, we create an entire wave of fear amongst our subconscious as a group of people, where we're too afraid to act. We're paralyzed. You can see it when you go to a concert now. The younger a concert attendee is, the more likely it is they are not dancing and moving without shame or without fear of criticism, especially if you go to something that isn't an EDM show. Like you go to like Snail Mail is a good example, because we just saw her. It's like the youngins, the younger the crowd was, the more likely it was they were kind of just sitting and, bobbing their head and vibing to the music, but they weren't really singing along. It's like this surveillance media and surveillance culture we find ourselves in, that's policed by, the authoritarian government, and then also, people who are on the left saying you can and can't say this, or you're being watched, and the first time you mess up, we're gonna, as a community, excommunicate you. It creates a catch-22 where everybody's afraid to act or even dance, because we put something up on social media and it's immediately ridiculed. This will even get clowned on. And it is a certain development of emotional resilience that we have to build, but we're not helping each other build that. That's for sure, especially on the internet. And, since the local community is challenged and threatens to be dissolved entirely with the way that we consume culture and consume art and mediums, it's like, people question their relevance regardless, because if they don't have a following, or if they're not immediately stamped by the culture, then they're just a means of ridicule, instead of seeing, each individual human that is choosing to create content or put themselves out there to create media and art as a unique expression of the universe. Because at the end of the day, I believe we're each a unique expression of a universe, and the universe and a multitude of universes, a multiverse, if you will. And, in the spirit of being that, it's like, yeah, there's an immense amount of hate, but there's an immense amount of love and joy too. And one of my favorite teachings here lately is from the Buddha, where the point of it's the big belly Buddha. It's finding joy in suffering, like in your periods of suffering and intense pain or psychological dissonance, still being able to recognize what brings you joy. Because, and to parallel that and to make that real world, I have pretty severe TMJ, and I'm a rapper, I'm a talker, I'm a yapper. So it really can hurt and swell my jaws to the point of aching. Like last night laying down, I was in so much TMJ pain that, like my eyeball hurt. However, in those challenges when the pain meds aren't working or I'm feeling too stiff from the stress, it's like I want to feel the depth of that low so that I can allow the suffering of the pain to pass. And the pain can still exist. However, I can still experience other emotions whilst I'm in pain. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there who are so afraid to feel pain because we're a prescriptive culture where it's like, let me heal all your pain, let me take all your problems away, and I don't really think that serves to create a resilient society. And clearly we're having trouble and struggling with being a resilient society because, face it, like in the 21st century, if you've got hot running water, you're living better than scores and scores and histories of how even the richest have lived. And we have a lot of advantages afforded to us, but now it's like the next prison is deeply psychological. What I tell people, and I tell a lot of my friends, is I feel like World War II was this big physical war, and the threat was clear. Like there was a good, there was a evil. And even when it was going on, though, like, the U.S. or what is it, Eastern Europe, they were still not quick to assume that the Nazis were doing anything of a genocide. And it wasn't until we invaded that we uncovered the genocide. And we're like, oh, we had a hunch, but we didn't act on that hunch. It's like we're clueless until we're not. And it's hard to draw back to that point because I've forgotten where I'm at. Let's see, we were talking about World War II, talking about propaganda. Actually, just not knowing that genocides are going on. Oh, there we go. I got it. I'm way back on track for you. Most definitely. Okay, so World War II was this big physical threat. We had to go somewhere and die. The scores. We have scores and scores of family and stories where someone from the U.S. touches down on the beaches in Normandy and they very quickly realize they're never coming home again. Whereas, like, now the great war that's being waged on us is far more psychological and spiritual in its nature, whereas the war is being waged upon your soul and your spirit and your psychology and your emotions. And it's either to repress them or to inflame them in order to control you or to weaken your spirit. And it sucks because, fundamental religion fell for proper reasons. They were doing some heinous shit. It deserves to fall. However, without, the general populace's spirit intact, it's like, what is meaning and purpose then? Like, what's it all for? Because that's what religiosity and theology in its numerous pantheons, that's what it provided, was support. It provided belief. It provided a hope that things can be better, will be better, either in this lifetime or other lifetimes. It taught things like compassion or the preciousness of life. Like, we are not very precious about life right now. If anything, we're very dulled to the preciousness of life. Like, whether it's dead bodies on Twitter, whether it's violence everywhere. You just seeing someone getting stabbed to death. Like, these things are just on the internet that even a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old can just browse through. And the flattening of life is in our universal subconscious right now, where even words like civil war gets tossed around. However, if you see a film like Civil War, that A24 flick from a year and a half, 2 years ago, you see the reality of what it would mean for a civil war to actually happen, and nobody wants that. We don't want that. It's heinous to think that that's the language we use sometimes, because the depth of what a civil war would actually cause would be a tragedy and a travesty that we're not ready or prepared for, and that I'm going to do and use my voice to champion against violence and to still preach nonviolence, because there is a diplomatic solution for all of this. And if there's not, that's not my place. My place is with the poets. The poets are going to write poetry. The warriors are going to go to war. I can only invoke diplomacy because I'm a diplomat. And peace is my perspective. And what I really wish is balance and harmony, because chaos exists and order exists. There's few universal laws to me, but this and that, and ebb and flow, there is an opposite for every similarity. And for every revolution, there's a counter-revolution. For every authoritarian government, there is a democratic government or a democratic people fighting against it. It's like this push-pull in this universe is infinite. Truly, it's exponential, and it's going to continue to crest, like waves hitting rocks, and it's going to wax and wane like lunar cycles. And I drive myself crazy and I get depressed sometimes because I see everything as such a push and a pull that, there's an inescapableness to it, and you start seeing that pattern everywhere. And even that kind of can feel like it causes me not to see the depth in life sometimes, because I'm still trying to find my place and still trying to find the unusual bits in the patterns of life that aren't so cyclical that it becomes redundant and boring and depressing, or serves to suffer me into monotony, And so I'm going to continue to keep putting my voice out there and keep championing how I can, and give you everything I've got, and give the world everything I've got, because that's all I've ever known, is to share with you and to let you know it's going to be okay, and to hold your hand through the scary parts. That's the type of friend I am. I'm the friend you hit up when you're terrified that everything's going to burn down, to remind you when everything does burn down, it's okay. Like, forests grow again. We think in Western culture things have to stand forever and we have to live forever, but in Eastern cultures, like in Japan, they'll build a shrine out of wood. It'll last X amount of years, and then it'll decay to the point where they have to rebuild it entirely, or sometimes it'll burn down and they rebuild it again and name it the same thing. And that's to show the spirit of what is destroyed is rebuilt again. And the West uses a great means of fear to control you, thinking that you are going to last forever, or you're capable of lasting forever, when death is nature, death is natural. Endings to your existence are natural. It's unnatural at this point in time for life to persist in this mortal frame and mortal coil past your expiration date. And we all have to transition, in making that precious and sacred would really serve to ease a lot of people's fears around death and dying, or people to not perceive someone who's 70 plus years old like as a total travesty of passing away, because after like 65, that's beautiful that you made it to 65, and anything that takes you out post 65, it's a blessing. You got 65 years. The tragedies lie with the people who are young, the people who are under 65, the sudden takings, those are where real tragedy and loss lie. And it is sad, however, it's still the honest truth that we all have our own time to transition, and I'm here to help you adjust to it, here to help you as a voice of an alternative way of looking at things to bring you peace, because there's tranquility in knowing that your suffering in this mortal coil will end, and same for your families and your pets and all of you. And that's a beautiful thing. And I still get really sad, and I'm deeply affected by death just like everybody else, and have a huge aversion to it. If you know me, I got a lot of skulls that I wear. I got all the black in the world in my closet. I've got a Death Eater sleeve. I shroud myself in it in order to understand it, so that I'm not afraid of it. If you listen this far, go ahead and just smack a subscribe, hit me with a like, show me some love, because I love you. And I hope you're treating yourself well and treating your people well and not intentionally causing harm to others. I'll see you on the other side of a Monday mood. It's Cuebas. Peace.